Millions of fans were glued to their screens as Caitlin Clark stepped onto the golf course, not a basketball court, and instantly turned a casual celebrity tournament into one of the most talked-about sports events of the week. Clips of her swing spread like wildfire across TikTok, headlines popped up on ESPN, SportsCenter, and every major outlet. Comment sections flooded with fans who couldn't get enough of the crossover moment they didn't even know they needed. A women's basketball player suddenly had the golf world buzzing, and everyone noticed. Everyone except the one organization that should have been shouting it from the rooftops, the WNBA. While social media exploded, while sports media amplified her star power, while brands saw a goldmine moment unfolding in real time, the league that employs her, the league that has profited from her popularity all season, stayed completely silent. No promotion, no highlight reposts, not even a basic acknowledgement that one of their biggest assets was dominating headlines outside her own sport. That silence was loud. And for a growing number of fans, it wasn't surprising. It was confirmation of what they've been saying for months. Caitlin Clark isn't just a rookie. She isn't just talented. She's the reason arenas that once sat half empty now have people lining up hours before doors open. She's the reason TV ratings jumped to levels the league hasn't seen in over 2 decades. She's the spark currently lighting the entire business side of the WNBA on fire. And yet, the moment she generated millions of dollars in free publicity, the league's response was to pretend it wasn't happening. That wasn't just a mistake, it was a disaster. Because while the WNBA stayed quiet, major sponsors were paying attention. They saw the numbers, they saw the demand, and they realized something the league seems terrified to admit. Caitlin Clark might actually be a bigger marketing force than the entire WNBA brand itself. Behind closed doors, a power shift has begun, one that could reshape the future of women's basketball forever. Sponsorship money is quietly changing direction, bypassing the league and heading straight toward Caitlin Clark's personal brand. And if the WNBA doesn't figure out how to adapt fast, they may wake up to a very uncomfortable reality. The most valuable part of their business isn't theirs to control anymore. This isn't speculation. It's already happening. And the deeper you look, the more you realize how big this crisis truly is. Because the question now isn't whether Caitlin Clark can lift the WNBA. The real question is whether the WNBA can keep up with Caitlin Clark. And that's where the story really begins. The moment Caitlin Clark entered the professional stage, brands didn't just take notice, they mobilized. Marketing directors, sponsorship teams, executives with decades of experience, all of them saw the same thing in real time. A once-in-a-generation return on investment. Not someday, not with slow, careful growth, right now. Companies aren't just slapping Caitlin's face onto a poster and calling it a campaign. They're building entire marketing strategies around her name, her personality, and her ability to pull millions of eyes toward whatever she touches. The most telling part? These campaigns barely even mention the WNBA. The league's logo is shrunk. The branding has faded into the background. Because for major corporations, the math has become painfully simple. Caitlin Clark drives a better return on her own than the league does as a whole. And this shift isn't happening gradually, it's happening fast. Marketing budgets that were once reserved for league-wide promotion are being quietly rewritten to funnel directly into Caitlin-specific initiatives. Brands are asking for more of her, more appearances, more content, more crossover events. They've realized that she doesn't just reach women's basketball fans. She pulls in casual sports fans, kids discovering her for the first time, new viewers who never cared about the WNBA until she arrived. Sponsors live in a world where numbers are king. They track every click, every sale, every view. And those metrics have delivered a message so clear, even the most cautious executive can't ignore it. Caitlin Clark isn't just influencing the market, she is the market. Every player hopes for endorsement deals. Caitlin is receiving multi-channel investments designed to elevate her as a standalone brand. She has crossover appeal that stretches far beyond basketball, and sponsors are already treating her as someone who can influence culture itself. Here's where the plot thickens.
The WNBA had the inside track. They had the home court advantage. They had the player every corporation wanted to be aligned with. And instead of using that moment to strengthen the league's presence, they let sponsors realize something dangerous. They don't need the WNBA to cash in on Caitlin Clark. That realization changed the landscape instantly, because once companies discover the star matters more than the league, the power dynamic shifts forever. And that shift is only getting started. But what made executives so confident that betting everything on one player was the smarter move?
The answer isn't complicated. It lies in something measurable, undeniable, and impossible to argue with: the numbers. And those numbers tell a story the league can't run from. Up next, how Caitlin Clark completely rewrote the WNBA's business model the moment she stepped on the court. It's rare for a single athlete to shift the financial foundation of an entire league. But the moment Caitlin Clark suited up for Indiana, everything changed. Not gradually, instantly. Television networks that used to be satisfied with a few 100,000 viewers suddenly saw numbers skyrocketing past 2 million whenever the Fever took the court. Games that once blended quietly into the sports calendar became must-watch events. Arenas that spent years fighting to fill empty seats found themselves overwhelmed with demand. Ticket prices on resale sites shot through the roof, sometimes surpassing the cost of NBA games in the exact same cities. When Caitlin arrived, the WNBA didn't just see an increase, it experienced a full-scale surge. Merchandise sales told the same story. Her jersey didn't just outsell every player in the league, it outsold entire teams. People who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives were suddenly waiting in line to buy anything with Caitlin's name or number on it. Her highlights turned social feeds into non-stop hype cycles. A single step-back three or laser-focused pass could pull more engagement in one night than some franchises generate in an entire season. She created something that WNBA has been chasing for decades: cultural relevance. When she plays, people talk. When she doesn't, the silence is noticeable. Executives across the sports world took one look at those numbers and made an assessment that's now driving everything behind the scenes. They didn't see a promising rookie carrying some future potential hype. They saw a revenue engine, a business asset unlike anything the league has handled before. Caitlin Clark hasn't just moved the needle. She's become the baseline for what success looks like. Every metric that investors care about, viewership, ticket demand, social visibility, brand interaction, points directly to her. And that's where the WNBA's biggest challenge emerges. Because when one player becomes responsible for such a massive share of the league's momentum, sponsors don't ask how they can support the league, they ask how they can get more Caitlin Clark. That shift in thinking is the core of this entire story. The WNBA was handed the most valuable promotional tool in its history, and instead of celebrating it, they acted like they needed to protect the league from her impact. That's when things started to crack, because the only thing more powerful than the Caitlin Clark effect is the backlash it triggered from inside the league itself. And sponsors saw that, too. Up next, how the WNBA turned a marketing miracle into a public relations headache, and the dangerous misread that started it all. You would think a league desperate for mainstream attention would wrap its biggest attraction in bubble wrap. You would think they'd do everything possible to highlight her talent, protect her health, and build the brand around her success. But instead, the WNBA made a decision that still has fans shaking their heads. They treated Caitlin Clark's rise as a threat that needed to be contained, not a breakthrough that needed to be celebrated. The physical play didn't just increase, it turned into a weekly spectacle. Hard collisions that would draw instant ejections in other leagues were brushed off like playful initiation rituals. Elbows to the jaw, just part of the game. Full-speed body checks, veterans setting the tone. Each time fans expected a whistle, the broadcast delivered excuses instead. And the worst part, it kept happening right when the largest audiences were tuned in. Millions of people, brand new customers the league has begged for, watched the most valuable rookie in modern sports get knocked to the floor, stared down, and shoved after plays, with the officials and the commentary team treating it like nothing. Those viewers weren't applauding toughness, they weren't impressed, they were confused, even angry. Instead of showing off the skill level of the WNBA, it exposed insecurity.
Longtime stars who spent years building their reputations suddenly seemed more determined to humble the rookie than to grow the game beside her. The message came across loud and clear. Respect is earned here, and popularity doesn't count.
That might sound noble in a locker room speech, but in a boardroom presentation, it's a nightmare. Sponsors don't invest in resentment. They invest in momentum. They invest in what audiences enjoy. And audiences weren't tuning in to watch unnecessary cheap shots. They were tuning in to watch Caitlin Clark, the player who brought them there in the first place. Behind closed doors, owners began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why does the league keep downplaying the person responsible for its biggest revenue jump in decades? Why are we protecting egos instead of protecting the one player driving our growth? How long will fans tolerate seeing the storyline turn hostile rather than inspiring? Instead of leaning into the wave everyone was excited to ride, the WNBA tried to push back, and that pushback created a perception that could haunt them for years, that some inside the league would rather shrink the spotlight than share it. Sponsors noticed, fans noticed, and they weren't waiting around for leadership to figure it out. Because while the WNBA acted like Caitlin Clark's success was something to manage, the LPGA treated it like marketing gold. And that contrast exposed everything. Up next, how another league with zero financial stake in Caitlin did more to promote her in 1 week than the WNBA did all season. When Caitlin Clark showed up at a celebrity golf tournament, the LPGA didn't hesitate. They didn't overthink it. They didn't worry about who might feel overshadowed. They recognized exactly what they were standing in front of, a crossover superstar with the kind of attention sports marketers spend entire careers chasing. So they did what any smart league would do. They maximized every single second. They placed Caitlin in the same group as Nelly Korda, the biggest draw in women's golf. They captured every angle. They encouraged media interviews, autograph sessions, viral content opportunities, everything the WNBA has refused to do consistently. And the payoff was immediate. Headlines everywhere, trending moments, a flood of engagement that golf rarely sees outside major championships. Fans who never cared about the sport were suddenly learning the names of LPGA players, all because of one brilliantly handled opportunity. And here's the part that should make WNBA executives wince. The LPGA doesn't even employ Caitlin Clark. They didn't spend years developing her game. They don't pay her salary. They have no long-term business obligation to her career. Yet they understood the moment better than the league that desperately needs to grow. While the LPGA capitalized on Caitlin's popularity, the WNBA acted like it wasn't happening. No reposting her highlights, no shout-out for the exposure she brought, no acknowledgement that the biggest women's basketball star on earth just helped another sport go viral. That silence didn't just feel strange, it felt intentional. And brands picked up on that. They saw the golf world shine a spotlight while the WNBA chose darkness. They saw one league celebrating the star who brings global attention and another league pretending it didn't notice. That's when a subtle realization clicked for sponsors. Maybe the league that should value her the most doesn't. The LPGA offered a masterclass in promotion, one that showed exactly how much value Caitlin Clark brings when the people in charge actually know what to do with it. And whether the WNBA wants to admit it or not, that comparison triggered a shift in confidence across the business landscape. If the WNBA won't support the star driving their growth, then companies will support her instead of them. And once sponsors start changing where their money goes, everything changes. Up next, the quiet deals being rewritten behind closed doors, and why some of the WNBA's biggest partners are already moving on. Inside boardrooms and marketing departments, the conversation has completely shifted. It's no longer, how can we help the WNBA grow? It's, how do we secure Caitlin Clark before someone else does? And that one change in focus has created a ripple effect that league leadership can't afford to ignore. Brand executives aren't issuing bold public statements or calling press conferences. They're taking a much smarter path, rewriting the rules from the shadows. Contracts that once centered around league-wide visibility are being quietly restructured to prioritize one thing: exclusive access to Caitlin Clark. Those deals still include the WNBA logo somewhere, but only because it comes attached to her by default. The real investment is the face on the billboard, not the league that hosts her games.
Marketing dollars that were supposed to support league events are now funneled directly into digital content tailored around Caitlin's story, her journey, her highlights, her unique impact. Reports suggest that some sponsors have already reduced their spend on WNBA playoff packages because they're getting far better returns promoting Caitlin as an individual star. Her brand delivers results instantly, while league-branded campaigns often struggle to generate the same excitement. And here's where things get even more revealing. Companies are changing how they talk about partnerships. What used to sound like official partner of the WNBA is quickly becoming partner of Caitlin Clark. It's a subtle wording shift, but it carries a massive implication. The power isn't in the organization anymore. It's in the individual. On paper, the league still sees money coming in, checks are still being cashed, but behind the numbers lies a truth that sponsors are no longer bothering to hide. The WNBA is no longer the priority. Caitlin Clark is. That's the kind of shift that permanently alters a business model. Because once brands discover they can follow the star directly, they no longer feel obligated to go through the league to reach fans. Suddenly, the WNBA becomes the middleman, not the product. And nothing terrifies a sports league more than realizing its most valuable revenue stream doesn't actually belong to it. The scary part? This is still early. Executives are testing the waters, seeing how far they can push the line while keeping partnerships polite and professional. But if the WNBA continues resisting Caitlin's impact instead of embracing it, those polite adjustments could turn into full exits. Sponsors aren't sentimental. They go wherever the audience goes. And right now, the audience follows one player. What happens next is what truly determines the league's future. Because when the financial center of gravity shifts toward a single star, the entire structure around them has to adjust or collapse under the weight of its own pride. Up next, how this power shift is already forcing owners to question whether leadership understands what business they're actually in. Every sports league believes it controls the product. The teams, the branding, the scheduling, the identity. Leadership assumes everything runs through them. But something unprecedented is happening right now inside the WNBA. Sponsors, fans, and even team owners have made a quiet yet unmistakable decision. The product isn't the league anymore. The product is Caitlin Clark. And that realization has created a power shift the WNBA never prepared for. Team owners walking into board meetings aren't talking about collective growth or rising league-wide exposure. They're asking pointed questions like, why are our highest-rated moments the ones centered around a single rookie? Why do sponsors want Caitlin-specific deals but have no interest in our playoff packages? Why does every financial spike crash back down the moment she's not on the court? Those questions don't just expose concern. They expose a lack of confidence in leadership's vision. Because when growth relies this heavily on one player, owners need reassurance that the league can properly protect and promote that player. And right now, they aren't convinced. The numbers tell a blunt story. Games without Caitlin, viewership drops, ticket prices fall, media coverage slows, social engagement goes quiet. The excitement doesn't follow the league, it follows her. And every executive in the room knows that the worst thing a business can do is lose the driver of its momentum. This is why sponsors are no longer asking for league exposure. They're demanding Caitlin Clark exposure. Not the shield, not the brand, the star.
And once brands start building their marketing strategies around a single player, the power dynamic flips. Caitlin Clark holds more influence over the WNBA's financial future than the league office itself. She became the ticket, and everyone knows it. Here's what makes that so dangerous for the league's structure. If the WNBA continues to treat Caitlin as someone who needs to be humbled instead of someone who needs to be elevated, what's stopping sponsors from bypassing the league completely? What's stopping them from creating independent events, private partnerships, or crossover appearances that generate bigger returns with zero WNBA involvement? Suddenly, the league isn't the gatekeeper. It's the obstacle. And once that perception forms, reversing it becomes nearly impossible.
Because sponsors don't argue. They don't negotiate out of emotion. They simply follow the revenue, wherever it goes. Caitlin Clark has the rare leverage that players spend lifetimes chasing. She matters more to the league than the league matters to her. That is the ultimate shift in power, and it's already happened. Up next, Nike's massive bet, the commercial, the crossover marketing strategy, and why they're positioning Caitlin Clark as more than just a star, but the future face of the entire sport. Then came the moment that confirmed what every brand executive had already realized. Caitlin Clark isn't simply a rising star. She's a marketing empire in motion. Nike didn't wait to see how her rookie season unfolded. They moved early, they moved big, and they made sure the entire sports world understood exactly who they were betting on. It started with a high-production commercial that felt more like a blockbuster trailer than a typical sneaker ad. Movies don't get that kind of budget unless studios expect a massive return, and Nike knows better than anyone where demand is headed. The message was unmistakable. Caitlin isn't just part of the future, she is the future. But the commercial was only the opening act. Behind the scenes, Nike began engineering a brand around her, a personal identity designed to stand on its own. They developed a signature logo built to live on shoes, clothing, posters, commercials, everything. That type of branding isn't casual. It's a signal of long-term commitment, the kind reserved for athletes expected to shape entire eras of their sports. And Nike wasn't interested in waiting years to cash in. They launched limited edition footwear that vanished from shelves the moment it released. They pushed campaigns featuring her face front and center, while the WNBA logo quietly faded into the background. And the most telling part? The timing. They aligned major releases with high-visibility cultural moments, like that viral golf spotlight, capturing momentum the WNBA let slip away. Nike didn't stop with basketball either. They leaned into her crossover appeal and greenlit products designed to reach new audiences beyond the typical fan base. A player who can drive sneaker sales and spike sports viewership? That's not a seasonal trend. That's a brand cornerstone. And with every campaign, every product drop, every headline, the narrative became clearer. Caitlin Clark isn't being lifted by the WNBA. The WNBA is being lifted by Caitlin Clark. For a league struggling to define its place in the sports market, this was the lifeline they've always wanted. The spotlight was finally theirs to share. But instead of stepping into the glow, they looked away. Now the world waits to see whether the WNBA will recognize that the most valuable asset in its history is standing right in front of them, or whether sponsors will continue building around her while the league keeps falling behind. Because Nike has already made its decision. Caitlin Clark isn't the moment, she's the movement.
Right now, the WNBA is standing at a crossroads so monumental it will define the league's next decade. On one side is growth, the kind of explosive, mainstream momentum women's basketball has chased for years. On the other side is decline, the continuation of old habits, internal resentment, and missed opportunities so obvious that fans and sponsors can see them from miles away. Caitlin Clark has done everything a league could possibly hope for. She brought in new audiences, she made national broadcasts feel like major events again. She transformed ticket sales, merch sales, social engagement, and cultural relevance overnight. She delivered the biggest wave of attention the WNBA has ever experienced, and she did it without demanding anything other than the chance to play the game she loves. But no wave lasts forever. Momentum either gets captured or it crashes. Brands have already made their choice. Sponsors are building strategies directly around her popularity. Fans follow wherever she goes. Media outlets can't stop covering her impact. The question left, the only question that matters now, is whether the WNBA is going to ride alongside the phenomenon that's rewriting its business model, or whether they'll keep resisting it until the momentum breaks away and takes the money with it. Because here's the reality leadership can't ignore. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA to be a star, but the WNBA absolutely needs Caitlin Clark to be relevant. If the league embraces her, supports her, protects her, builds with her, women's basketball can reach a level no one ever thought possible. A new era with real financial stability, mainstream exposure, and global recognition. The opportunity is right there, right now. But if pride gets in the way, if the league continues treating her success like something to manage, correct, or quiet down, then they will become the first sports league in history to fumble the biggest gift they've ever been handed. The future of the WNBA depends on one choice: stand beside the player who changed everything, or get left behind by the star who doesn't need permission to shine. Which path will they take? Let us know in the comments, because the world is watching, and the next move decides everything.